Alright, so we need to talk about the Sony Spider-Man Universe and where it's headed because so far, it's headed towards nowhere, especially after the failure of Madam Web and the upcoming Venom 3 and Kraven, and even with the recent news that came out that was Sony that delayed Kraven, and now towards the end of this year, and now we're looking at this, has this Spider-Man universe from Sony has been a failure, like all this time it's leading towards nowhere. And also that's what we're going to break down in today's video. It's talking about, is the Sony Spider-Man universe a failure, especially after what Sony has done with these characters and try to build them up into some sort of like a Sister Six and try to establish Spider-Man when Sony clearly has the rights to Spider-Man and not to make a Spider-Man movie with Spider-Man in it, and so much more. And so, if you're new here, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification button to get notified future vids and more stuff like this. But now, let's get into it. And now, as I've mentioned, that breaking previously, that was Sony has deleted Kraven the Hunter from August of this year to now December 13th of 2024. And even with the Kraven the Hunter, which I am not looking forward to whatsoever. I'm excited for Aaron Taylor Johnson to take on the role as a sort of like Spider-Man villain, but even to, I'm excited for him. But even with the movie that looks totally ridiculous and not to establish Spider-Man in it, even though that we saw spiders in the trailer, even that we're supposed to get the movie like possibly like last year in 2023, but that didn't end up happening. But even with Sony that has delayed this movie so many times, it like has me thinking of like, is this like a future that Sony is building up with the Spider-Man universe and with its characters, is it headed towards nowhere? And like, even as we look at this universe as a whole, as it establishes like so much characters, like starting from Venom, Morbius, Madam Web, and even with the upcoming Kraven movie, it looks like, it is headed towards nowhere. And like, even with these characters that have so many connections to Spider-Man, and yet Sony has failed to establish Spider-Man in any of those movies, especially after the failure of Madam Web and like trying to like pull in like after not pulling in like a Spider-Man in it, even though that we had like a Spider-Man variant and like that was after these three Spider Women, and like that ended up being a failure. And even with the upcoming Kraven the Hunter, which it looked ridiculous, and it looked sort of fun too at the same time, but at the same time, I no longer have faith in their universe. And now, with this next point that I want to make is what Sony is doing. I'm pretty sure it's definitely failing of the way they're building up their universe. For example, even with Venom Let There Be Carnage in the post-credit scene, that with Venom and Eddie, like they're established in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and even with Tom Holland Spider-Man, but even people that want Venom to go up against Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and like even with Sony, that is not like doing their best to give the fans what they want, or like even like for having like an epic showdown, or like or sometime down the road to have Miles Morales introduced into the MCU. What is Sony doing at this point of trying to make all these Spider-Man spin-off movies without having Spider-Man in it? And that's mainly the whole deal. Like, Sony has the rights to Spider-Man. Like, they've been making Spider-Man movies ever since like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies from 2002, and with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies, especially with the Amazing Spider-Man from 2012, and like Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But even as it went into these spin-off characters having their own movies, but even what they were trying to build down the road is like a Sinister Six that is never going to end up looking good. But it was never going to look like from the comics or from the source material. And in fact, like even with these characters that they established, it's mainly going to be ended up as a failure for them. And you with Kraven the Hunter, and like for how that story is going to be turned out. We've seen what Aaron Taylor Johnson is going to do in that movie. I'm excited for him to take on that role, and like. But just with the way that movie looked, it looked so bad. I wasn't even looking forward to it at all. In fact, even if we got the movie last year in 2023, I'm pretty sure everyone will be ranting on about it. But now that they got Madam Web earlier this year or some type, but like now, what Sony is doing is possibly a failure for Spider-Man in its future. And even as I look at it now, what Sony is doing, it's basically not so good. It's going to lead into failure. And even if y'all remember that with Sony that skipped out on CinemaCon this year, and they're not going to show anything from their slate, what they have going on to continue their Sony Spider-Man Universe, or whatever they want to call it. But it's possibly going to lead into failure because, and like, even like, I mean, even with the upcoming Venom 3 and Kraven, it's not like I'm rooting for these movies to fail, but I'm pretty sure with these people that are definitely rooting for these to fail, I mean, even like at Madam Web, I mean, every person in the world was like rooting for this movie to fail because of how bad that movie looked as well. But even with Venom 3, which I'm looking forward to it, perhaps I mean, it is last movie in the franchise with The Last Dance, and like, even with Kraven the Hunter, I mean, it's definitely releasing during the holiday season, so during the holiday rush. But I think that movie is gonna end up flopping because there is no clear sense of direction of what Sony is doing with their Spider-Man universe, or to establish the name Spider-Man in their universe. I mean, they clearly have the rights to Spider-Man, so whatever they are trying to do, it's basically gonna lead into failure, and there's no clear future at this point. And also, with another thing that I want to touch upon, because even after the failure of Madam Web, which I did not like at all, but I liked everyone's performances. I mean, they did their decent job. Like, they did their work. They did their job. But even with Dakota Johnson, I definitely deserved better, especially after this movie. And like, even though well the actresses involved in this movie came out and said like the movies are good. And I think with Sydney Sweeney herself, like definitely came out and I stated that, but after Madam Web, I'm kind of feeling worried about what Sony is going to do with their universe of Sony's Spider-Man Universe characters that they have established. But even as we look at it now, I think like they should definitely focus on Tom Holland's Spider-Man trilogy. Like they should focus on continuing his story, and even if they establish these characters and these movies and these characters are not going anywhere, like I think they should definitely just move on, especially if these movies end up feeling and not having the success or the word of mouth from critics and audiences. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is I think Sony just needs to give it up and sell the rights to Spider-Man back to Marvel Studios and just make a better story from here on out. And then also, one last thing is that even with Morbius, that was like a box office bomb, and like everyone hated on that movie, which, I mean, I didn't like the movie myself. I thought it was so dumb, and even to have, I think, like Jared Leto play this Morbius, an anti-hero vampire character, like this Spider-Man villain, but even throughout the movie it turned out to be a dang disaster. And like even after that post-credit scene with Vulture coming in there and and it has to do with Spider-Man, but again they didn't establish Spider-Man in that movie. Towards the end of that movie, even they were trying to establish like a Sinister Six that was never gonna go anywhere. So that's where I led towards here, and now I'm kind of getting worried, and I think Sony just needs to move on. And so, to basically sum it all up, is yes, I think the Sony Spider-Man Universe is definitely failing, especially while these characters they have established, they all have connections to Spider-Man, because even with these characters that are villains and that fought Spider-Man before in the comics and in the source material, something tells me that I think they are heading for failure at this point. But even if they can get better, they can establish Miles Morales, especially make him canon to the MCU. And I think, I mean, Sony, I mean, I think what are you doing? I think Sony, you can do better from here right now. It's just make a movie with a Spider-Man in it, and hopefully it'll get better towards the end of the day. But right now I'm kind of feeling skeptical and worried, and that's how I feel as well. And so that's going to be it for this video. Just let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and what do you think of this video and my thoughts if the Sony Spider-Man Universe is failing, and I want to hear your opinions, so just let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe and turn on notifications about video videos. I'll also follow all my social medias with the link down below. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.